Welcome back to the Wealth Blueprint Brick by Brick featuring Marissa and Jessica from the Sapphire Group. Marissa, what are we going to talk about today?
Today, we're going to get into the May stats. They just came out, so let's go into that first. So the average price is sitting at 1.166 million across the GTA, which is up since April. I mean, slightly. We kind of been at a plateau in terms of price for quite some time now. But the bigger story is that sales continue to be very low. So we had 7,000 sales for the month of May, which was down compared to April with more days in the calendar. So we're at about just over 3 months of inventory, which is pretty high for the GTA. So active listings, we finished the month with over 20,000 active listings, which is a lot. So that's up from April by a couple thousand. And so I think kind of what happened is like we started the year off pretty strong in January and February. And I think there was a lot of pent up sellers that wanted to sell for a while, but they were just waiting for that perfect time. And when things started to heat up, they kind of decided, okay, I'm going to jump in. And I think a lot of people had the same idea. And that kind of not flooded, but it increased a lot of supply at the same time. And just not really being absorbed, especially for condos. I think I saw a stat that I think it was maybe just downtown Toronto, or maybe it was Toronto as a whole, that there was over 30 months of inventory for condos, which is a lot.
Yeah, I think it's not the best time to be a condo seller right now.
No.
Especially if you're one of those people that have a set price that you want to sell by. That's not happening. It's not working in your favor right now.
Yeah, definitely not. And I've been noticing that a lot of the condos that have been selling are actually tenanted, which is so much harder to move because typically like tenants want 24 hours notice. And like, you know, I both know like when you have a client that's showing, sometimes they tell you, hey, can we see a place today or tomorrow or, you know? And so if you have to give 24 hours notice, you might just skip that one over. Like, oh, we can't see it because we need to give the proper notice, right?
But one thing I will say is if I were to advise people that were looking into condos and investments, it's a good time to grab one.
Yes, if you can stomach it. Because the thing is that you're going to be out of pocket for quite some time and like by a lot of money. Before, some people are out of pocket, you know, $100, $200, which is fine. You could justify that knowing that over time the condo is going to grow and appreciate, right? But if you're out like $500, $1,000, sometimes people are like, sometimes they're like $1,500, $2,000 deficit on a monthly basis. And given what's happening in the economy with inflation, like a lot of people can't afford it. And I think that's what's happening. A lot of people are forced to sell because they can't hold on any longer.
Yeah. And one thing that you mentioned before that I want to go back where you're like, I think this is what happened. There's actually stats to back up what you said. So Royal LePage conducted a survey earlier this year, and 56% of Canadian adults that were active in the housing market were forced to postpone their search because they were scared about the rising interest rates since March 2022. And so more than half said they'd resume it if it went down at least 25 basis points. So I think that's like a really good segue into what we just saw, June 5th? Where the Bank of Canada had a 25 basis point drop. So what do you think about this? For me, I don't necessarily think there's going to be an overnight effect of like, all right, everyone's jumping in.
No.
But I will say there was so many people jumping in February when people were saying they are going to drop it. So now that they have dropped it, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, good question. So there definitely is a ton of pent up demand. And I think like the average person doesn't necessarily realize that the rate drop only affects variable rates. It doesn't affect fixed rates, which has been lower than the variable for quite some time. And so like historically people go for the fixed rates. I know me and you prefer variable because it performs well over time, but not everybody is okay with that risk, the uncertainty of taking a variable rate. So most people in general take fixed, and with the discrepancy, it's like 2% difference between fixed and variable. Now it's like 1.75 because there was that 0.25 drop. So it doesn't really change affordability unless you were like gung-ho on variable, because like you still have to get stress tested 2% above variable. So but like I said, I don't think the average person knows that. So just hearing this rate cut might just like signal to them, okay, the worst is behind us. Now we're actually moving in a direction where things are going to get a little bit more affordable. I'm ready to start that search again. So there definitely is pent up demand. And as we know, buyer sentiment is a strong driving factor in the housing market. So I think it will stimulate activity. I don't think it's going to affect prices this year, to be honest. Definitely not in the condo space. I think it could affect the freehold space because there is, some kind of competition there already. But typically, like, spring is the hottest the hottest season to buy, and we have like 1 month left of spring market. Then it goes into July and August, which people don't typically like to buy in. Condos is pretty busy in July, but August in general is a pretty dead month for real estate. But what I do think might happen is they're saying there's a 96% chance that they're gonna decrease the rate again in September. So I think if they do that, I think it's really going to signal, okay, people are going to want to come step back into the market. And I think we will start to get a lot of more activity in terms of sales because we are at a very low point in terms of sales. I think there's going to be a lot more activity in that sense. But in terms of prices, I think we're not really going to see a huge price increase until next year.
And I, as a current variable rate mortgage holder who stuck through the struggle since 2022, it's really just like $15 less per 100,000. But honestly, I'll take any cut at this point because affordability is at its highest in terms of like paying for groceries, paying for gas, paying for anything, right? Now, I wanted to really get into also. I would totally always recommend variable because we are expecting more cuts. But you make a very good point of like prime people are getting for like 5% now. So if I like to think of it, if you're getting like a 3-year rate at 5%, in 3 years, how I think of it in my mind, are we going to be lower than 5% and am I going to be paying more?
So yes, that's a good point. Like if you do the math and you have to use forecasts by experts, I think it might actually work out in favor of variable at this time. But the problem is that variable right now is so the prime rate is like 6.75% depending on the bank you go to. And then they usually give a discount of, if you get 1% discount off of prime, like that's really good. I don't even think banks are really offering that anymore. You'd have to talk to a mortgage agent, which I'm not. But that's 5.75%, right? And so if you're looking at 5.75% versus 5%, now if you go with the variable, your budget from the bank is going to be less than if you go with fixed. And I think that's why a lot of people are swinging towards the fixed, is because even at 5%, you're like, a lot of people are like, this is all I can get, and I make $150,000 and I can only afford $650,000 property. Like, what can I buy with that? So I think a lot of people are moving towards fixed still, only because the bank is giving them a bigger property.
I also think it depends on personality. I have some friends that are like, I will always be fixed. And I'm like, why would you always be fixed? That makes no sense.
Stability, right?
It's stability. Yeah. And like, I'm a person that likes to take risks, not really, kind of. But I think that makes sense. So speaking of interest rates and changes to the market, I think another big couple of changes have happened in the Ontario legislature. So 2 housing bills have passed forward. And so one of them is the Homeowner Protection Act, which I could talk about forever for. So there's a couple of things that did change, and I'm only going to highlight like 2 of them. Okay. I think that's the best. I don't think we're going to go into like heritage homes or anything. Yeah. But one of them that I think is like integral, and I think it's such a valuable piece of legislation, is banning registrations for notices of security interest. So basically, notices of security interest are registrations that businesses can make on the land registry when it rents, finances, or leases goods or services like hot water tanks or furnaces, and they install them on the property. Now, the problem with these, they're intended to like protect the business, but what's ended up happening is horrible humans on this earth will target people like seniors or vulnerable people and get them to sign up, put liens on their homes, register these NOSIs. I would call them nosies, but I don't think that's what it is. And then they're going to have to leverage them into like they can never sell their home. They have high interest mortgage rates on the property. And if they were ever to like want to move into a senior home or whatever, they can't because this liens on it and they'd have to buy it out. Yeah. So this doesn't mean that it's taking away from, security interest on the fixture and validating their contract. But like me and you talked about this. It's just like any other contract you have. You have to pay, you have to fulfill it, or they can remove it. But this way, you're not taking advantage of vulnerable people and putting liens on their property, which is horrible. And it's happened to so many older people that I know.
Yeah, a lot of people prey upon the seniors because they don't always know better. It actually happened to a family member of mine. They sign up for all this like Enercare protection plans, and they just don't even need it. But yeah, I think that's a great step forward. It's just because the businesses are still protected. It's still a contract. It's just a different way of attaining the same goal without, people suffering as a result. So I think it's a great thing that they're doing this.
It's a great step forward. Another thing that the Home Buyers Protection Act put forward was the cooling period. And we talked about this in one of our reels. So they're introducing 10-day cooling periods for freehold properties because they already exist for condos currently.
Yes.
But for pre-construction condos.
Yes.
But did you know that when it passed, they didn't give us a date this time?
Yeah.
So what they did was they said, like, we're going to be in further consultations to see how we can move this forward.
Sneaky.
Why do you think that, Marissa? Why do you think that?
Yeah, sneaky. Well, obviously not everybody's happy about this. I'm sure the builders are probably like throwing their hands up in the air and putting pressure on the government because of it. But to be honest, I don't think it's going to have a negative impact on builders, to be honest, because I think, so right now, not all builders have it available, but when they launch any kind of project, they typically also have the agreement that you can preview before. So you know that once you sign this right now, that it's like in effect immediately. So anybody that wanted to take it to the lawyer to talk about it, they could do that right now. Usually they can ask for a copy of the agreement to present to their lawyer and say, hey, is this okay? Like, should I move forward with this? Or any other kind of due diligence they need to do, talk to their financial advisor, anybody in their family. So I don't think it's really going to have a negative impact on builders. I think if this was introduced in a hot market when people were just making decisions in an instant, I think it would. But right now, people can take the time right now to decide, do I really want to buy this property? So people are doing that before they're even signing the agreement. So I don't think builders really need to be so worried.
So I'm of the opposite opinion of you, just because I'm a person where I'm like, okay, it's signed, it's done, it's completed. Like, I like my deals firm. Of course, when it comes to being a buyer agent, I want them with conditions and make sure they're okay. But I really I think that, and I'm not going to use any names, but I think in the provincial government, there's been a lot of pissing off of builders, whether it's opening up the green belt, then not opening up the green belt, then offering this new thing that's just furthering a delay for their process, because now they have to wait 10 days. And I get it, like in a hot market, like how many people waited out in lines, tented out for days or whatever. So let's say all that happened and then they don't go through with it, and then what? They're gonna have to have another launch day until they fully sell out the project. So I think just costs on a day-to-day basis go up, where it's for those hot projects, or even some right now are still good hot projects, like detached and Pickering or New Seaton particularly, people still do line up. Yeah. And even agents and stuff line up, and then they buy this to flip after too, right? I think there it's just it might have a slight impact, just an annoyance.
Yeah, it might be an annoyance, but what has happened with condos, because condos already have this, right? So we already know that condos are already selling even though they have this cooling off period. And what typically happens is let's say I buy a pre-construction condo, and I have this 10-day cooling off period. Let's say day 7, I pull out, whatever. And let's say there is all this demand. So someone says, hey, by the way, this person was lined up, they didn't get in. There's this other person that pulled out. Do you want to take it? And if that person takes it, they don't have the 10 days again. They just have about those 3 days. That's what happened to one of my clients. I mean, maybe the builder was being sneaky about it, but that's what happened. So if that's a way that they can get around it, then it's not like they have to restart constantly. It's just I
feel that builder is sneaky.
Yeah, maybe.
It's a new contract. It'd have to be through the law, right?
But at that time it was 2021. You can if they wanted it, this is what the terms were, and they can play that role. They have the power, right? So, and they really wanted it. So of course they were okay with the 3 days. They had enough time to talk to their lawyers. So,
well, one thing to say on that is an interesting fact. So the Ontario Real Estate Association was saying like this is one of the things that they lobbied for. And one of the things that they didn't they lobbied against was they didn't want cooling periods for resale homes.
Yes.
But imagine you're selling your house and then this buyer comes back and they're like, you know what? Because of the legislation, I have 10 days, so I actually don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
How would that stress us out as agents? I know people can do that with inspections right now, right? Yeah. But BC actually passed this. So for example, it came into effect in, I think, February or January of 2023. So basically, every home buyer has by law 3 days mandatory where they can pull out of an offer. And the one good thing before I read into it that I was like, what the heck, that would be the worst thing ever, is there's like a cancellation or a rescission fee. So it's 0.25% of the purchase price.
Which is substantial, especially in BC with their home prices so high.
$250 for every $100,000. So like, that is a substantial amount of money. But I'm like, it is a protection in the sense of like, if you are just like, messing around. We're like, I'm throwing an offer just so I win. I'm going to beat this person out by it and then I'm going to get out of it because I don't want it anymore. Like that, I would be like really upset about as an agent, right?
Yeah.
Imagine I had multiple offers. I had someone that was going to give me a firm deal. But of course now every deal has this 3 days.
Yeah.
And someone's like, oh, well, we can get rid of it within 3 days. At least there is some sort of penalty.
Yeah, So I'm glad that they didn't approve this for resale. If they did, I would only be okay with it if they did have a penalty because just like you said, people will just be playing games, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like a home inspection condition, like you can back out for that. You can back out for financing condition, and at least the home inspection condition is like forcing the buyer to actually, invest a little bit more money that they can't get back. So if they hire a home inspector, it's costing them $500 to $1,000, maybe more depending on the property. And if they get the report back and they're not too happy with it, they can back out, but that money is gone, right? So they're only backing up for a good reason. Yeah, exactly. So if they came with a penalty, it wouldn't be so bad because it would just like erase all the people that are just trying to buy time to figure out their own stuff. But yeah, I wonder how this is going to affect us going forward. To be honest, I don't think it's going to have a substantial effect, but I think it's good that they are allowing buyers this period because some people are very like, they see something, they want to buy it right away and then they don't really think it through.
I bought my house on Zoom. During COVID, not just like randomly, but I bought my house on Zoom.
Yeah.
It reminds me actually, speaking of government legislation and stuff, our Honorable Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Honorable, yeah.
He actually recently leaked out a message that...
and by leaked out, publicly stated in an interview on Globe and Mail.
Go ahead. You're more passionate about this than me. You go say it.
So if you guys haven't seen, he stated in an interview with the Globe and Mail that he needs home prices to remain high or at where they're at because he wants to protect people's retirement and their nest egg. And like everybody kind of knew that Trudeau had this stance, but to publicly state this is so problematic because now you're full out saying that housing is an investment and it's not a basic necessity. And for you to be saying that home affordability is your number one priority, well, this completely conflicts with it.
Mm. And to be honest, most people are backing away from retirement because they can't afford anything in life. And so they're working to later years. So there is no nest egg because even if they sell their property, which in this market, you're not really getting a substantial amount unless you have it paid off or you bought it like in the 1980s, right? And then what? You're going to go live in a retirement home where, profit companies are going to kick you out of it. And then where are you going to live? Yeah. I think it was a very faux pas statement to make.
Yeah, I can't believe he actually said that. Like... I'm just kind of lost for words at it because it's just so problematic to take that stance when you're like Canadians are struggling, and you're trying to make homes more affordable. And now you're saying, yeah, I'm actively propping up the prices because I need them to be that way for himself all homeowners. Yes. Like I think it's good to try to help out homeowners, but you have to also help out the first time home buyers. And there's ways to do both, right? Because having a shelter over your head is a basic necessity.
100%. It's a human right. And I think, yes, some people, I mean, there's different ways to think that you've done life right. And obviously different adverse life circumstances make it that way. But let's just say, like my parents, for example, they still have a mortgage. They've saved, worked hard, not really enjoyed any pleasure in life just to make it all work and make ends meet and make their kids, successful in their own ways. But they still have a mortgage. So like somebody tell Justin Trudeau it's not really a nest egg, because even if they sell their property, they're going to be getting another property probably at the same value that's smaller. And what's the point?
Yeah, and the fact that they increased this capital gains tax, like that would have been a better way to protect people's nest egg, because now people are sitting on all these profits and you're taxing them. You know what I mean? Like you could have just like let prices kind of deflate and get back to normal and not do this capital gains, or maybe even lower it. And that's how you protect them while still helping first-time home buyers.
Maybe we should go into politics.
Yeah,
I'm
maybe.
joking. Not for me. I'm good. I'm going to stick to my day
I'm
job.
happy with this path.
There was one more act that was passed. So it's the Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes Act. And so this one is more for like builders. So I guess, the provincial government pissed off builders in one way, and the other way they had to kind of help them out.
Yeah.
So they are developing business service standards for permit license services to reduce delays. So for example, now if you put in a permit, you're like, they wanted to build a system where you can check like, where is it at? How can we look at it? What needs to be done? How can we move forward? One thing I really, really liked is they have this like prioritizing infrastructure for ready to go housing projects where it's like you use it or you lose it. So if there's stalled development, let's say like Marissa Correa, which you would never do because you're on top of everything, bought like a plot of land and then was like I don't know where to go move forward. And we know a lot of projects that are like stalled. Yeah. It's like, okay, if you're not using it, then give it to someone else that is going to develop and build on it.
Do you know what the timeline is on that?
There's never a timeline with the government, Marissa.
It's still a proposition too. Right?
Yeah. So that I think was a good one. And then also builders will have the opportunity to determine how much parking they put into a home that they're building based on how much transit is in the area. So if they're building near a transit hub, they can decide that, which I thought was interesting, but like, I don't know. You know how I feel about like garage space and...
Is it for like condos? They mean like underground parking spots for condos maybe?
I don't know if like there is a limit, like there's a certain standard for how many parking spots you must have when you're building a condo, right?
Yeah.
I think more for like a detached or something in that sense, but those are something. So they're trying to really push these transit oriented communities programs for more builders to build. And then of course the elimination of provincial sales tax from purpose-built rentals. Yeah. So one of the really, really good thing is like more streamlining and approvals for student housing. So let's say a university or a college wants to build their own student housing, not through a private partner, through their own. That would be a faster process, and you would actually get more support in terms of building that on your campus.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, because I was reading up about it as well, and they're looking to streamline approvals to increase housing, reduce any unnecessary regulatory delays, modernize zoning laws. So this is all great stuff, right? And I'm not surprised, actually. I don't know why I was going to say I'm surprised. They should have done this like when they first said they want to make homes more affordable. One of the quickest ways to do that is to increase supply, and taking all the red tape off of, making it hard for builders to increase the supply was like one of the fastest ways of doing it. So they should have done this like years ago, to be honest.
Well, the goal is to save people and businesses 1.5 million hours and 1.2 billion every year, and ensuring that you build, I think it was 1.3 million more housing. Mm-hmm. Oh, and also for the parking thing, it was also to reduce it. So like more laneway houses can be built, modular homes, or garden suites. So that was also another reason why they were able to reduce parking.
Cool. Let's see how that fixes our housing market. If you need help navigating this market, make sure you set up a time with us using the link in the description. It's about a 20-minute video call where we go over your personal situation. And if you've been liking the content, make sure you like, subscribe, and share with your friends. It helps us produce more content for you guys. On to the next one.